Well, as the U.S. is beating the drums of war against Syria over an alleged chemical attack, newly revealed intelligence shows that Washington was fully aware of the use of nerve agents by former Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein against Iranian forces. The CIA's top secret documents, which have been published by American website foreignpolicy.com, revealed the then U.S. administration was bent on ensuring Saddam's victory against Iran at whatever the price. And so Reagan's government provided Saddam's regime with satellite images and electronic intelligence. CIA papers indicate that America's military and intelligence communities knew about Iraq's use of lethal nerve agents, including sarin and mustard gas, but did nothing to stop it. Iraq launched chemical weapons during the final months of the 1982-1988 war against Iran, targeted both Iranian civilians and armed forces, as well as Iraqi Kurds. Thousands of people lost their lives and many sustained lifelong injuries in those attacks. Let's switch over to Beirut, joined by international lawyer Mr. Franklin Lamb. Thank you so much for being with us. Do you find it odd, Franklin, that especially with the situation now that is happening in Syria, on the one hand, the U.S. and its allies are basically beating the drums of war and talking about the loss of human life, and at the same time, they have continually, not just, of course, we're talking about the situation in Iran in the 1980s, where Saddam used chemical weapons, but even as recent as Gaza and with the Israelis and using the phosphorus bombs and other illegal weapons. Tell me, how do you explain what seems to be, some may say, hypocritical behavior?
Yes. Well, I think that's certainly what it is, a hypocritical behavior and the subversion of the principles which in this case, the West claim to support, humanitarian values. When they have an interest involved, it goes out the window. They've lost enormous credibility, and who believes anymore, as we did in the, many of us did in the late 50s and 60s and 70s, that somehow we were on a good course. I don't know, Marcy, if you remember a more dangerous time right now in Washington. I was on a conference call, and I can share with you some statistics that Hagel is advised that they've identified 600 targets in Syria, 380 of them just in Damascus. I spent a lot of time there. I'm not sure I could identify 10. There's lots of differences, as you know, from your studies and experience, between Libya and Syria. We've been through a lot of that. But one similarity, Marcy, is going to be once that first bomb falls and there's a so-called no-fly zone or any sort of retaliation, then it's going to be out of control. They're going to target every possible government, so-called government installation. They're going to miss plenty of times and kill a lot of civilians. What I find interesting is that the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, according to one of his staffers, said that there's a 50% chance that Obama is going to make that decision to go ahead. Obama is against it, I believe, at the moment. Hagel's against it. Dempsey's against it. The Zionists and the neocons are for it. The Armed Services Committee, the chairman, says there's a 40% chance we'll go to war, and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee chairman saying 50%. I'm not an alarmist type, I hope, and I'm no conspiracy theorist. But this is incredibly serious. And indeed, now you've got this morning Lindsey Graham accusing the Iranians and the Russians of provoking America, of challenging us to react. And they're going to argue that, look, we've got to stand up. We've got to be real men in this administration, and we've got to teach the Iranians and the Russians. I mean, this shows the simple mentality that can lead to war. So I cannot recall a more dangerous situation that we face in the coming 5 or 6 days. And
Franklin, actually, what we were reporting just in the last news section that already the UN investigating team who's on the ground there in Damascus has, they came under fire or near them. There was a problem. What about the possible scenario now that they are there, that insurgents may attack them and try to blame Damascus and then basically just bring on the war even sooner? And your perspective as far as the possibility that this will go into a war?
Yeah, I think that would be very consistent with their behavior and what would be in their political interest to do that, to shift that blame. Whether or not there's any evidence remaining, I'm told last night from Washington that there is, even though Haig and the rest are saying, well, it degrades and this was out-of-date stuff anyhow. That's why the symptoms aren't, you know, typical of nerve agents. But I think the UN, I personally think the UN, based on what I've been told, would find something. So the opposition, the rebels, yeah, sure, they don't want him in there, and they're going to keep him out. Again, we'll see. But, Marcy, I'm not sure the Americans and the allies, you know, Haig, the UK is eager for war. Turkey is eager for war. The French will go along. And 19, the figure I was given, of the 28 members of NATO, 19 out of 28 so far are ready for war. What Washington is doing this hour is building a coalition of the willing. Remember that? And this thing takes on inertia, and how do you stop it? And one missile into Damascus, what is that going to ignite? We don't know. So I think about your question about the rebels, yeah, I'm sure they would not want those inspectors to find the truth, because they're pretty competent. These people, they haven't shown all their cards, these investigators, but I'm told in Washington they're very good. They've got FBI technology and all the rest of it. Anyhow.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Very dangerous situation, of course, in Syria. Thank you so much for being with us, international lawyer Franklin Lamb out of Beirut.